my friends. Sunday was hot. It was intense. It was breathtaking. On the road, under the pressure of the opposing crowd, the Pittsburgh Steelers showed their identity, their tradition, and their grit. On the field, there was no mercy. It was sweat. It was heart. It was total commitment until the very last second. Black and gold shined. The defense was relentless. The offense was lethal. And together we wrote another chapter of respect in this glorious history. This is the Steelers spirit. Never give up, never bow down. Always fight for the next yard, the next victory. It's in adversity that steel is forged, and that's exactly what we witnessed on Sunday. And now, I want you to ride this wave with us. So smash that like to show your support, drop a comment below telling how you felt about this game, and let the world see that Steelers Nation is more alive than ever, because together, as one family, we are unstoppable. And now, let's get to it. Steelers fans, what if I told you that the numbers don't even scratch the surface of what's really going on with this team? You see the final score, you see a few highlights, maybe you hear some talking heads blaming Aaron Rodgers or questioning Arthur Smith's play calling. But when you actually dig into the film of this Steelers-Patriots game, the truth is both more alarming and more fascinating. Because what we saw on that field in Week 3 wasn't just a frustrating offensive stall or a defense bending without breaking. It was a live snapshot of the cracks and potential solutions that could define this entire season. And if those cracks don't get sealed fast, especially heading into the Dublin showdown with the Vikings, the noise around this team is only going to get louder. Let's start with what grabbed everyone's attention: the offense. 2 opening drives, 2 touchdowns. A late surge, capped off with Calvin Austin III finding the end zone. On paper, that looks encouraging, right? But peel back the layers of the middle portion of the game, and suddenly the optimism fades. The offense simply died out. Nothing worked. And when you look closer, it's not about Rodgers losing his touch or the receivers not caring. It's about the very foundation of this offense being unstable. Arthur Smith's philosophy has always been about simplicity, a smaller playbook, repeated execution dressed up with multiple formations. It worked in Tennessee with Derrick Henry pounding defenses and Ryan Tannehill thriving off play action. But here in Pittsburgh, that foundation is crumbling because the offensive line isn't holding up, and the run game can't force defenses out of their comfort zones. Here's the kicker. Rodgers is currently dead last in the league in average depth of target. Why? Because defenses know the Steelers can't run the ball effectively, even when they have the numbers advantage against too high safety looks. When you can't force defenses to commit to the run, you're essentially handing them permission to sit deep all day long. That takes away Rodgers' deep ball, his ability to stretch the field, and it forces him into a dink and dunk rhythm. And credit to Rodgers. He's making it work as best he can. Outside of a couple of over-aggressive mistakes, he's been composed, accurate, and far from the problem. The real problem is that when Rodgers does want to go deep, he either doesn't have the time in the pocket or his receivers aren't separating. Now, here's where things get even more frustrating. You'd think heavy personnel, tight ends, bigger bodies would help spark the run game. Against the Patriots, 2/3 of Pittsburgh's offensive snaps were out of heavy looks, and still, no push, no success, no rhythm. That's why defenses simply don't respect this offense right now, and that's why this passing attack feels handcuffed. But there were some bright spots. The screen game, for example. Jaylen Warren looked electric in space. DK Metcalf also showed flashes when given the ball with room to work. And this is where Arthur Smith and the coaching staff need to take a hard look at how they're using their personnel. Because right now, DK is being treated like a pure, deep threat. Fades, streaks, go routes. But that's not maximizing him. His true danger comes after the catch, when he's running downhill and defensive backs have to make business decisions about tackling him. That's what Smith unlocked with A.J. Brown back in Tennessee, and yet, with Metcalf, it feels like Pittsburgh is leaving meat on the bone. Fans expected an A.J. Brown-type role, and instead, it's just more of the same vertical usage we saw with George Pickens. That has to change if this offense is going to evolve.
And speaking of weapons, or the lack thereof, let's address the receiving core as a whole. Forget the idea of a big three like most NFL teams boast. The Steelers are operating with essentially two receivers, Metcalf and Austin, while Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth are playing hybrid tight end roles. Roman Wilson, he's been reduced to backup duties. The result? Against man coverage, nobody is consistently creating separation, and defenses know it. They sit in man, clog up options, and force Rodgers to settle. Combine that with a failing run game and heavy personnel that isn't paying dividends, and suddenly you understand why this offense looks like it's running uphill every single week. Now, let's talk about the trenches. This is where things get ugly. Both first-round tackles, Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, have been liabilities through the first 3 weeks. Inside pressure, quick losses, and constant collapsing pockets have become the norm. And while Jones was expected to need development, Fautanu was supposed to be closer to a finished product. That hasn't been the case. Neither looks ready for the responsibility placed on their shoulders, and that's putting Rodgers in survival mode. The hope, of course, is that both improve as the season progresses. But right now, that's a massive question mark. Then there's Jaylen Warren. If you want a silver lining, it's him. Even at just 3.1 yards per carry, the context matters. Almost every single run is him making a man miss in the backfield just to salvage positive yardage. He's been their most productive playmaker in the passing game as well. But here's the scary part. If Warren goes down, this entire offense is on life support. Najee Harris hasn't been that answer, and the workload Warren is carrying only raises the risk of injury. The Steelers are hanging their hopes on him staying healthy, which is a dangerous gamble across a 17-game schedule. So, when we piece it all together, Rodgers doing his job but shackled, Metcalf misused, tackles underperforming, the run game stuck in neutral, and Warren carrying the weight, it paints a picture that isn't about one player failing. It's about an offense structurally unprepared to threaten defenses the way it needs to. And until Arthur Smith makes adjustments, not just stubbornly sticking to his system, the Steelers are going to keep looking predictable, and predictable in the NFL is a death sentence. And fans, that's just the offense. The defense story is coming next, but before we get there, I want to hear from you. Do you think the biggest issue right now is the offensive line, the play calling, or the lack of receiver separation? Drop your thoughts because this debate is going to shape how we view this entire season. Because if you thought the offensive breakdown was eye-opening, just wait until we peel back what's happening on the defensive side of the football. See, this is where Steelers fans have to balance frustration with appreciation. Mike Tomlin's defense has always lived on the edge, bend but don't break. And in this game against the Patriots, it was the same old story. Yards piled up, drives stayed alive, but somehow the Steelers found ways to slam the door when it mattered most. That sounds fine on the surface, but the film tells us something else entirely. The system is creaking, the personnel shifts are glaring, and unless a few key names return and stay healthy, this defense will keep skating on thin ice. Tomlin's philosophy hasn't changed in nearly 2 decades. On early downs, it's simple cover 1 and cover 3. No flashy disguises, no fancy rotations, just straight up football. The hope? Your pass rush makes a play. Your opponent commits a penalty. Something sets the offense back so that on 2nd and long or 3rd and long, you can finally unleash the exotic looks, the fire zones, the Dick LeBeau-inspired blitz packages. But here's the problem. Teams have figured this out. They know that as long as they stay ahead of the sticks, the Steelers are predictable, vanilla, and attackable. Against New England, Pittsburgh only showed true disguises or rotations on 6 total pass defense snaps, and most of those came on the final drive. That explains why, over and over, offenses look comfortable marching down the field, only to get stymied in crunch time when the Steelers suddenly change the picture. It's a high-wire act, and eventually, you have to wonder if the rope will snap. Personnel-wise, we saw some important changes. Chuck Clark logged the most snaps at safety, while Juan Thornhill's role shrank dramatically, from 100% against Seattle down to under 40% here. Jabril Peppers, though, deserves the spotlight. A 90.1 PFF grade, flying all over the field, forcing fumbles, delivering in run support, and showing more range at deep safety than Clark or Thornhill. He looked like a tone setter, the kind of player this defense desperately needs more of. And then there's the elephant in the room, Joey Porter Jr. and Deshaun Elliott. Their absences have been felt like a punch to the gut. Without Porter Jr., the Steelers don't have that true press corner, that Meg defender who can shadow a WR1 and erase them on an island. Without Elliott, they're missing one of the league's best run-defending safeties. Put those two back with Peppers, plus the veteran savvy of Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay, and suddenly the secondary looks elite. But without them, it's patchwork at best. Now let's go to linebacker. Cole Holcomb over Peyton Wilson was the right call this week. Holcomb brought discipline, physicality, and reliability in his run fits. Wilson, on the other hand, struggled again, blown coverages, late reactions, and one glaring mistake in Tampa 2 that led to a Patriots touchdown. That hurts, especially after all the preseason hype and comparisons to Luke Kuechly. Right now, Wilson has a long way to go before living up to those lofty expectations. The duo that's emerging is Holcomb and Patrick Queen. And speaking of Queen, he came alive. 9 run stuffs in 2 weeks. Explosive instincts. Sideline-to-sideline speed. Sure, he's not locking down tight ends in coverage every snap, but show me the linebacker in today's NFL who does. His impact against the run is undeniable, and he's becoming one of the defensive anchors Pittsburgh can lean on. In the trenches, though, the questions remain. Keanu Benton has flashed disruptive ability, but he still gets driven back too often at nose tackle. And here's where the switch seems obvious. Move Benton to defensive end, where his athleticism and quickness can shine in one-on-one situations, and plant the 330-pound monster, Montravius Adams, or your black as he's called, at nose tackle to eat double teams and clog the middle. That adjustment alone could change the tone of this run defense, which has shown improvement but still looks shaky in moments. Now, let's talk about a weapon that isn't being unleashed. Jalen Ramsey as a blitzer. Think back to the Mike Hilton days. Offenses had to account for him on every snap because of his blitz threat. With Ramsey, the Steelers sent him only once against the Patriots, and what happened? 4th and 1 stop. Perfect execution. Why not use that more often? Why not make quarterbacks panic by knowing Ramsey could fly off the edge at any moment? That's an element this defense is missing, and it could make an already dangerous unit downright terrifying. Of course, the stars are still shining. TJ Watt is TJ Watt. 2 more sacks, constant pressure, game-wrecking energy. And Nick Herbig, he's making a case that could shake up this defense long-term. A forced fumble, relentless motor, and production every time he's on the field. With Alex Highsmith sidelined, Herbig has stepped into the spotlight, and frankly, he doesn't look like he's giving it back. Which raises a huge question for the future. If Herbig keeps this up, do you pay Highsmith big money to return? Or do you roll with the younger, cheaper, and potentially just as productive Herbig? It's the kind of roster decision that could redefine the defense in the next offseason. So here's the bottom line. The Steelers' defense is surviving on grit, a few standout performances, and the hope that injured stars return. The scheme hasn't changed, but the league has caught on. The personnel looks promising, but only if the right guys are on the field. And as good as Watt and Herbig have been, they can't do it all themselves. This is a defense that still strikes fear, but it's walking a fine line between dominance and disaster. Now I want to throw it back to you. If you're building this defense moving forward, what's your priority? Do you want Joey Porter Jr. and Deshaun Elliott back ASAP to fix the secondary? Do you want Ramsey blitzing like a weapon from the past? Or do you think the key lies in fixing the trenches with that nose tackle switch? Let me know what you believe is the real solution to take this defense from good to elite, because if it doesn't happen soon, these cracks are only going to grow deeper.